The Valaran Empire had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years. Their ships were massive, their weapons powerful, and their soldiers numbered in the billions. They had conquered 17 star systems and made slaves of 100 different species. No one had ever said no to them. No one had ever tried. Admiral Tovan stood on the command deck of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion. He was tall, even by Valoran standards, nearly 8 feet of blue-gray skin and muscle. His 4 eyes watched the strange little planet on the view screen. Earth, the natives called it. A small world of water and dirt, spinning around an average yellow star. "Scan complete, Admiral," his science officer reported. "Population of 8 billion. Technology level is primitive. Basic space travel only. No shields. No energy weapons. They use chemical propulsion and projectile weapons." Tovan made a clicking sound with his mandibles. It was the Valoran way of laughing. Another easy harvest. Prepared the standard ultimatum. The message was simple. It was the same message the Empire had sent to every species they encountered. Surrender your best military minds. Send us your generals, your strategists, your commanders. They would serve the Empire. In exchange, the planet would be allowed to exist as a servant world. Refuse, and every city would burn. Every species had agreed. Generals were practical beings. They understood power. They knew when a war could not be won. Earth received the message on a Tuesday morning. In a bunker deep beneath the mountains of Korea, a group of military officials watched the alien transmission. The room was cold and quiet. On the screen, Admiral Tovan's alien face spoke words that a computer translated into Korean. "Send us your greatest warriors. Your generals. Your leaders of war. You have 7 days." General Park turned off the screen. He was an old man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had fought in 3 wars and had seen enough death to last 10 lifetimes. "They want our generals," he said quietly. "They want puppets," said Colonel Bay, a woman with short black hair and a scar across her jaw. "Generals who will teach them how we think, how we fight, how to control us. So what do we send?" Another officer asked. General Park was quiet for a long moment. Then he opened a folder on the table. Inside were 12 files, 12 photographs, 12 names. "We do not send generals," he said. "Generals think about victory. These aliens have already won that war. We cannot beat their ships. We cannot match their numbers." He pushed the folder forward. "So we send them something else. We send them the soldiers that scare us." The files were stamped with red warnings. Psychological evaluation, unstable. Combat effectiveness, extreme. Recommended status, contained deployment only. These were not normal soldiers. These were the ones the military kept hidden. The ones they used only when all other options had failed. The ones who did not fight for medals or honor or country. They fought because something inside them needed to fight. They were broken in ways that made them perfect for war and terrible for peace. Colonel Bay picked up the first file. The photograph showed a young woman with short hair and empty eyes. Her name was Yuna. Her kill count was classified. Her psychological profile used words like detached and predatory. "You want to send her?" Colonel Bay asked. "I want to send all of them," General Park replied. "The aliens want warriors. Let us give them warriors they will never forget." 3 days later, a single transport ship launched from Earth. It was old and ugly, a cargo vessel with no weapons and barely functional engines. The Valarans watched it approach with amusement. They had expected warships. They had expected a fleet. Instead, this tiny craft limped toward their armada like a wounded animal. Admiral Tovan allowed it to dock. He stood in the landing bay with 50 of his elite guards, their energy rifles ready. The airlock hissed. Steam poured out. And then they emerged. 12 humans in black armor. Their suits were not elegant like Valoran battle dress. They were ugly and practical, covered in scratches and dents. Each human carried weapons that looked ancient by galactic standards. Metal rifles, ceramic knives, chemical grenades. But it was not their weapons that made Admiral Tovin's secondary heart skip a beat. It was the way they moved. They did not march in formation like proper soldiers. They spread out instantly, each one finding cover, finding angles, finding positions. They moved like predators entering a room full of prey. The leader stepped forward. She was small, barely 5.5 feet tall. Her black hair was cut close to her skull. She removed her helmet, and Admiral Tovin saw her face for the first time. She was smiling. "I am Sergeant Una," she said. Her voice was soft, almost gentle. "Earth received your message. You asked for our greatest warriors." Admiral Tovin straightened to his full height, towering over the tiny human. "We asked for generals, military leaders, not common soldiers." Una's smile did not change. It did not reach her eyes. "Earth does not send generals, Admiral. Generals are too valuable. They think too much. They hesitate." She looked around the landing bay, at the 50 armed Valoran guards, at the weapons pointed at her squad. She did not seem concerned. You wanted the best humanity has to offer. So humanity sent you its killers. The translator in Admiral Tovin's ear struggled with that last word. It had no direct equivalent in the Valoran language. The closest translation was something like, "one who ends life for pleasure." "Killers?" Tovin repeated. "The best ones," Una confirmed. "The ones our own people are afraid of. The ones we keep locked away until we need something to die." She tilted her head, studying the Admiral like a cat studying a mouse. "You wanted to know how humans fight. You are about to learn." Behind her, the 11 other humans stood perfectly still. They had not spoken. They had not moved. But Admiral Tovin noticed something that sent a chill through his bones. They were all smiling too. Private Dahan was the youngest, barely 22 years old. His file said he had killed 37 enemy combatants in close combat before his 18th birthday. He was watching the Valoran guards the way a wolf watches sheep. Corporal Myre stood in the shadows near the wall. She had already identified every exit, every camera, every weakness in the room. Her hand rested on her knife. She had not killed anyone in 3 months. She was getting restless. Specialist Jiwoo carried a datapad instead of a rifle. She was the squad's historian, their expert on warfare. She had studied every war humanity had ever fought. She knew 1,000 ways to break an army, 1,000,000 ways to break a mind. Private Hanel was the biggest of the group, nearly 6 feet tall with shoulders like a bull. He carried a weapon the Valorans did not recognize, a shotgun, modified for close-quarters combat. He was humming quietly to himself. He always hummed before things got violent. Lance Corporal Swa stood at the back, her face hidden behind her visor. She was the quietest of the group, also the most dangerous. Her specialty was fear. She did not just kill enemies. She made them afraid to sleep, afraid to close their eyes, afraid of every shadow. And at the front, Sergeant Una continued to smile at Admiral Tovin. "Where would you like us to begin?" She asked. Admiral Tovin looked at these 12 small creatures. They had no shields, no energy weapons, no ships. By every measure, they were harmless. And yet something deep in his brain, some ancient instinct that had kept his ancestors alive for millions of years, was screaming at him. Run. But Tovin was an admiral of the Valoran Empire. He did not run from primitives. He straightened his uniform and gestured toward the door. "Follow me," he commanded. "We will begin your evaluation immediately." Yuna nodded politely. Of course, Admiral. Lead the way. As the Valorans escorted the humans deeper into the ship, none of them noticed Corporal Myray counting the guards. None of them saw Private Dawn memorizing the patrol patterns. None of them caught Specialist Jiwoo recording the ship's layout on her hidden device. The humans smiled and followed and said nothing, and somewhere deep in the ship, in a room full of Valoran officers, someone pulled up Earth's historical database. They were looking for information about human warfare. They expected to find primitive battles, simple conflicts. Instead, they found Hiroshima. They found the Somme. They found Rwanda and Dresden and Stalingrad. They found 200,000 years of humanity, killing itself with creativity and joy. And for the first time in Valoran history, an officer requested a drink. Before finishing a report, the Empire had invited wolves into their home. They just did not know it yet. The Valoran training facility was the size of a small city. It filled an entire deck of the flagship, with buildings and streets and open areas designed to simulate urban combat. The walls could change shape. The lighting could shift from day to night. The environmental systems could create rain, fog, snow, or darkness. It was here that the Empire tested new soldiers. Here that generals learned to command. Here that conquered species discovered just how hopeless their situation truly was. Admiral Tovan stood in the observation tower, looking down at the facility through reinforced glass. Beside him stood Commander Vex, leader of the elite guard. Vex was massive, even by Valoran standards, 9 feet of muscle and armor. His body covered in scars from 100 battles. 50 of my best soldiers, Vex said. His voice was deep and confident. Against 12 primitives. This will be quick. Below, the simulation had begun. The Valoran elite guard moved in perfect formation. They advanced through the streets in groups of 5, covering each other, communicating through silent hand signals. Their energy rifles hummed with deadly power. Their armor could stop projectile weapons. Their training was the best in the galaxy. The humans had vanished. The moment the exercise began, all 12 of them disappeared into the urban maze. The Valarans searched with thermal scanners, motion detectors, and infrared cameras. They found nothing. Where are they? Commander Vex demanded. No one answered. Then Private Dohan struck. He came from above, dropping from a 3rd-floor window onto a Valoran patrol. He did not use his rifle. He used a knife. The blade found the gap between helmet and chest plate before the first soldier could react. Dohan twisted, pulled, moved. 3 soldiers fell in 2 seconds. The other 2 turned to fire. Dohan was already gone, rolling behind a wall, sliding through a window, becoming shadow again. Contact? A Valoran shouted. Sector 7. 15 soldiers rushed to Sector 7. They found 3 dead bodies and no enemy. Corporal Myray was already behind them. She had crawled through the ventilation system, dropped silently into a side street, and positioned herself at their backs. Her rifle spoke once, twice, 3 times. Training rounds hit armor, marking kills. 3 more soldiers down. They spun to return fire. Myray was not there. She had moved the instant she fired, relocating to a new position 20 meters away. By the time they searched for her, she was behind them again. In the observation tower, Admiral Tovan watched with growing unease. They do not fight properly, he said. Properly? Commander Vex snorted. They fight like cowards, hiding, running, striking from shadows. And it is working. Below, the chaos continued. The humans never engaged in direct combat. They never formed lines or held positions. They flowed like water, appearing and disappearing, striking and retreating. Every time the Valorans thought they had cornered one human, 2 more attacked from different directions. Specialist Jiwoo had found a communications hub, She did not destroy it. Instead, she fed false information into the Valoran network. Soldiers received orders to move to positions that exposed them. Patrols were sent in circles. The elite guard began fighting their own confusion as much as the humans. Private Han-Nul did not hide. He walked through the center of the facility like he was taking a stroll. His shotgun boomed every few seconds, the sound echoing through the artificial streets. He was a distraction, and he knew it. While everyone focused on the big human with the loud weapon, the others slipped through the gaps he created. Lance Corporal Swa did not fire a single shot. She did something worse that she found a Valoran soldier alone, separated from his squad. She did not kill him. She appeared in front of him, removed her helmet, and smiled. Then she whispered something in broken Valoran and vanished. The soldier ran back to his squad, shaking. He would not say what she had told him. He requested removal from the exercise, thought it was the first time an elite guard had ever quit. After 90 minutes, the exercise ended. Commander Vex had lost 43 of his 50 soldiers. All 12 humans were still active. Not one had taken a single hit. Admiral Tovan descended from the observation tower. His legs felt strange, like they did not belong to him. He found Sergeant Yuna sitting on a crate, drinking water from a metal bottle. She was not even breathing hard. "This is not how war is fought," Tovan said. His voice was higher than he intended. "You use no formations, no strategy, no coordinated attacks." Yuna looked at him with those empty eyes. "We used the best strategy, Admiral. We used fear. Fear is not a strategy." "No?" Yuna stood up. She was so small compared to him. A child next to a giant. "Your soldiers are trained to fight enemies who stand in lines. Enemies who follow rules. Enemies who want to survive." She stepped closer. "We do not want to survive, Admiral. We want to win." "There is a difference." Commander Vex stomped over, his armor clanking. "You cheated. You broke the rules of engagement." Private Dawn laughed. It was not a nice sound. "Rules? In war?" He pulled out his knife and began cleaning it, even though it was already spotless. "On Earth, we have a saying. If you find yourself in a fair fight, you plan poorly." This was a training exercise, Vex growled. Not a real battle. "Wrong," Corporal Myre said from somewhere behind them. No one had seen her approach. "Every battle is real. Every fight is for survival. You Valorans have forgotten that. You have won so many easy wars that you forgot what a real enemy looks like." Specialist Jiwoo stepped forward, her datapad in hand. "I studied your military history, Commander. Very impressive. You have conquered 17 star systems. But tell me, when was the last time you fought an enemy that wanted to kill you more than it wanted to live?" Vex did not answer. "I thought so," Jiwoo continued. "You have never met an enemy like us. Your species conquers through overwhelming force. You show up with bigger ships and more soldiers, and your enemies surrender because they are rational. They calculate the odds and choose survival." She smiled, and it was the same cold smile that Yuna wore. "We do not calculate odds, Commander. We calculate damage." Admiral Tovan remembered something from the Earth database. Something about a war in a place called Vietnam. A superpower with advanced technology against farmers with ancient rifles. The superpower lost. Not because they were weaker, but because the farmers were willing to pay any price, suffer any cost, sacrifice anything and everything for victory. He looked at the 12 humans standing before him. They were not soldiers in the Valoran sense. They did not fight for honor or empire or duty. They fought because something inside them needed violence the way other beings needed food and water. "What are you?" he asked quietly. Sergeant Yuna considered the question. We are what happens when a species spends its entire existence at war with itself. We are the survivors of 200,000 years of evolution that rewarded aggression, cunning, and the ability to kill without hesitation. She paused. Your empire conquers species that want to live, Admiral. We are a species that learn to love dying, as long as we take our enemies with us. That night, Admiral Tovan called a meeting of his senior staff. The room was quiet. The officers who had watched the exercise did not make eye contact. We cannot send them back, Tovan said. Earth knows we have made contact. If we return their soldiers without using them, it will be seen as weakness. Then we use them, his tactical officer suggested. But carefully. Keep them under guard. Never let them near critical systems. You think guards will stop them? Commander Vex asked bitterly. He had reviewed the footage of the exercise 17 times. He still could not explain how Corporal Myray had gotten behind his soldiers. They took apart my elite guard like children, pulling wings off insects. And they were not even trying. Not trying? Someone asked. They used training rounds, Vex replied. Non-lethal weapons. They were handicapped, and they still destroyed us. He shook his head. I have served the Empire for 60 years. I have fought the Dravik Collective. I have faced the Mantis Horde. Nothing has ever scared me. He looked at Admiral Tovan. Those 12 humans scare me. Tovan was quiet for a long moment. Then we make sure they fight our enemies, he said finally. Not us. Give them quarters. Give them equipment. Give them anything they want. He stood up. And pray to every god in the galaxy that they never decide to stop being our allies. The meeting ended. The officers filed out. None of them slept well that night. In their new quarters, the human squad settled in. The rooms were too big, designed for beings twice their size. But the beds were comfortable, and the food was acceptable. Sergeant Una stood by the window, looking out at the stars. They are afraid of us, Private Hanel said. Grinning. Good, Una replied. What happens when they stop being afraid? Una turned from the window. Her face was calm, almost peaceful. Then we remind them why they should be. Somewhere in the distance, a Valoran soldier walked past the human quarters. He hurried his steps. He did not know why, but something in his bones told him not to linger. Not here. Not near them. High Scholar Venix had spent 300 years studying conquered species. They had documented the psychology of 17 different civilizations, cataloged their hopes and fears, analyzed their breaking points. Venix understood minds the way engineers understood machines, but humans made no sense. Venix walked through the corridors of the research wing, their 4 eyes scanning the datapad in their hands. The information was disturbing, not because it was strange, but because it was so terrifyingly consistent. Every species in the galaxy followed certain patterns. They valued survival. They protected their young. They avoided unnecessary conflict. They sought comfort and security. These were not just cultural traits. They were biological imperatives, written into the very code of life itself. Humans shared none of these patterns. Or rather, they shared all of them, but only when it was convenient. When survival conflicted with other goals, humans chose those other goals. When protecting their young meant sacrifice, they sacrificed. When comfort and security stood in the way of something they wanted, they threw both away without hesitation. They are insane, Venix muttered to themselves. An entire species of the mentally ill. They reached the door to the human quarters and paused. Through the small window, they could see Specialist Jiwoo sitting alone, reading something on a Valoran datapad she had somehow acquired. No one had given it to her. Venix decided not to ask how she got it. They pressed the entry chime. Come in, Jiwoo said without looking up. Venix entered. The room smelled different than the rest of the ship. It smelled like humans. There was something sharp in that scent, something that made Venix's old hunting instincts whisper warnings. "Hi, Scholar," Jiwoo greeted them. She set down the datapad and smiled. It was a friendly smile, warm even. But Venix had learned not to trust human smiles. "Here to study us?" "Yes," Venix admitted. There was no point lying. Jiwoo seemed to know everything anyway. "Your species confuses me. I hope you can provide clarity. I will try." Jiwoo gestured to a chair. "Sit, ask your questions." Venix sat carefully, their long legs folding awkwardly into the human-sized furniture. "Your species was not bred for war. Your bodies are soft. Your bones break easily. Your senses are weak. You cannot see in darkness. You cannot hear beyond a narrow range. You cannot smell danger." They paused. "By every measure, you should be prey, not predators. How did you become this?" Jiwoo laughed softly. "That is the question, is it not?" She leaned back in her chair. "Let me tell you a story, High Scholar. A true story from our history." She began to speak, and Venix listened with growing horror. Long ago, humans lived on great plains filled with animals. Some of these animals were large and dangerous. Lions, tigers, bears, creatures that could kill a human with one strike. We had no claws, no fangs, no armor. We were, as you say, soft and breakable. How did you survive?" Venix asked. "We invented something called persistence hunting. We could not outrun our prey. We could not overpower them. So instead, we followed them. For hours. For days. We walked after them, slowly, steadily, never stopping. The animals would run, and we would walk. They would rest, and we would keep walking. They would drink, and we would keep walking." Jiwoo's eyes grew distant, remembering something ancient and primal. Eventually, the animals would collapse from exhaustion. Their bodies were not built for endless pursuit. Ours were. We would walk up to these magnificent creatures, these beasts that could tear us apart in seconds, and we would kill them while they lay helpless. Not with strength, with patience, with stubbornness, with the absolute refusal to ever give up. Venix felt their secondary heart stutter. "That is monstrous. That is human," Jiwoo corrected. "We are not the strongest species on our world. We are not the fastest or the deadliest. We are the most stubborn. We do not stop. We do not quit. We do not accept defeat." She smiled again. "Your empire conquers species through overwhelming force. You win because you are stronger. But what happens when you meet an enemy that does not care about strength? An enemy that will crawl after you on broken legs? An enemy that will fight with teeth after you cut off their hands? An enemy that considers dying a small price to pay if it means hurting you? That is madness." "Yes," Jiwoo agreed. "It is. And it is why we are still here." She picked up the datapad again. "Would you like to know about our wars, High Scholar? The ones we fought against each other?" Venix did not want to know. But they nodded anyway. Jiwoo began to read. She spoke of trenches and gas and mud. She spoke of cities burned to ash and populations erased. She spoke of weapons that could end all life, pointed at enemies across oceans. Held there by nothing more than the promise of mutual extinction, she spoke of the siege of Leningrad, where 1 million people starved rather than surrender. She spoke of Stalingrad, where soldiers fought for single buildings while the snow turned red. She spoke of Iwo Jima and Verdun and Gettysburg. "We call it total war," Jiwoo explained. "It means there are no limits, no rules, no civilians. Everything becomes a weapon. Everyone becomes a target. Victory is not measured in territory gained or resources captured. Victory is measured in how much you can destroy. Why? Venix asked. Their voice was barely a whisper. Why would any species do this to itself? Jiwoo was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was soft, almost sad. Because we are afraid, High Scholar. Humans live with a terror that your species has never known. We are aware, constantly, of how fragile we are, how easily we die, how quickly everything we build can be destroyed. This awareness drives us mad. It makes us desperate. It makes us dangerous. She looked at Venix with those strange human eyes. Your species lives for 1,000 years. You have time. You can be patient. You can wait. Humans live for 80 years if we are lucky. We do not have time. We are always running out of time. So we grab everything we can. We fight for everything we want. We burn with an intensity that longer-lived species cannot understand. Venix understood then. Humans were not warriors despite their weakness. They were warriors because of it. Evolution had created a species that knew, deep in its genes, that it was always one mistake away from extinction. And instead of making them cautious, this knowledge had made them reckless, desperate, willing to risk everything because they had so little to lose. There is something else, Jiwoo continued. Something I think you need to understand about my squad specifically. About why Earth sent us instead of generals. Tell me, we are not normal humans. Normal humans are doctors and teachers and artists. They build families and grow gardens and dream of peaceful futures. They are kind and creative and wonderful. Jiwoo's smile faded. We are not them. We are the broken ones. The ones who came back from war and could not stop seeing enemies. The ones who feel most alive when death is close. The ones who look at violence the way others look at love. You are damaged? We are weapons, Jiwoo said simply. Earth forged us in fire and horror. They shaped us into tools for killing. And then, when the wars ended, they did not know what to do with us. You cannot unbuild a weapon. You cannot put the violence back inside the bottle. So they kept us contained, controlled, waiting for the next war. She leaned forward. And then you arrived. You, with your empire and your demands. You wanted warriors. You wanted the best humanity had to offer. So Earth opened the doors to our cages and pointed us at the sky. Her smile returned cold and sharp. You have no idea how grateful we are. We were dying in peace, High Scholar. Rotting in a world that had no use for us. Now we have purpose again. Now we have enemies. Venix stood abruptly. Their legs were shaking. I need to go, they said. Of course. Jiwoo returned to her datapad. Thank you for the conversation. It was nice to talk to someone who wants to understand. Venix hurried out of the room. They walked through corridors without seeing them. Their mind was full of images. Trenches filled with bodies. Cities disappearing in atomic fire. A species that had spent 200,000 years perfecting the art of murder. They reached their office and locked the door. Then they sat in the darkness for a very long time. Finally, they activated their communicator. This is High Scholar Venix, they said. I need to speak with Admiral Tovan immediately. The matter is urgent. What is the nature of the emergency? The communication officer asked. Venix thought about how to answer. How to explain what they had learned. How to describe a species that had turned self-destruction into an art form. We have made a mistake, they said finally. A terrible mistake. The humans are not primitive warriors. They are not simple killers. They are something we have never encountered before. What are they? Venix closed their eyes. They are a species that has already survived the apocalypse. Multiple apocalypses. They have faced extinction and fought it off with nothing but stubbornness and rage. They have killed billions of their own kind and kept going. They have created weapons that could end all life and chose not to use them only because they found the threat more useful than the reality. They took a deep breath. The humans are not afraid of death, Admiral. They are intimate with it. They know it. They understand it. And they have learned to make it work for them in ways we cannot imagine. The line was silent for a long moment. What do you recommend? Tovin's voice was quiet. Venix thought of Jiwoo's smile. Cold, sharp, patient. 300 warships appeared at the edge of Valoran space, emerging from faster-than-light travel like sharks rising from dark water. They struck the border world of Verix Prime with overwhelming force. Within hours, the orbital defenses were burning debris. Within days, the ground forces were in retreat. The Dravik were unlike any enemy the humans had seen. They were insects, in a sense. Massive creatures with 6 legs and armored shells, their minds linked together in a hive consciousness. They did not feel fear because fear served no evolutionary purpose for a collective. They did not value individual life because individuals were merely cells in a greater organism. They were, in many ways, the perfect soldiers. No hesitation. No doubt. No mercy. Admiral Tovin called an emergency meeting. The holographic display showed Verix Prime, its cities marked with red, indicating Dravik occupation. The numbers were grim. 300,000 Dravik warriors on the ground. Valoran forces reduced to 40,000, trapped in a single fortress city. We cannot hold, Commander Vex reported. His voice was tired. Our troops are exhausted. Ammunition is running low. The Dravik do not sleep. They do not stop. They simply keep coming. Then we evacuate, another officer suggested. We cannot. Tovin pointed at the display. The Dravik have established anti-air positions around the fortress. Any evacuation shuttle would be destroyed before reaching orbit. Then we negotiate. The Dravik do not negotiate. They absorb or they destroy. There is no middle ground. The room fell silent. On the display, the red tide of Dravik forces crept closer to the last Valoran position. Let us go. Every head turned. Sergeant Yuna stood in the doorway. No one had heard her enter. Behind her, the rest of her squad waited in the corridor, already wearing their combat armor. This is a command meeting, Tovin said. You were not summoned. We heard about Verix Prime. Yuna stepped into the room. Her eyes were bright in a way that made several officers look away. 300,000 enemies. 40,000 defenders. Impossible odds. Correct. Which is why we are discussing evacuation options. No. Yuna smiled. Which is why you should let us go. Commander Vex laughed bitterly. 12 humans against 300,000 Dravik? Even you cannot be that arrogant. We are not going to fight 300,000 Dravik, Commander. We are going to hunt them. Yuna moved to the holographic display. Your soldiers fight in formations. They hold positions. They defend territory. That is why you are losing. The Dravik are a hive mind. They think together, act together, fight together. Your defensive strategies mean nothing against an enemy that can coordinate 300,000 bodies as one. And you have a better strategy? Tovin asked. We have a different strategy. Yuna touched the display, zooming in on the Dravik positions. The hive mind is their strength, but it is also their weakness. They share consciousness, which means they share experiences. What one feels, all feel. What one fears, all fear. Dravik do not feel fear, Vex interrupted. Not yet, Yuna agreed. But they have never met us. She turned to face the officers. Give us transport to Verix Prime. Give us weapons and supplies for 2 weeks. Then wait. Do not send reinforcements. Do not attempt communication. Just wait. In 14 days, either the Dravik will be gone, or we will be dead." She paused. "Either way, your problem will be solved." Admiral Tovan studied the small human woman. She was asking to be dropped behind enemy lines, outnumbered 25,000 to 1, with no support and no extraction plan. She was asking for permission to commit suicide, and she was smiling about it. "Why would you do this?" he asked quietly. Yuna's smile did not change. "Because this is what we are for, Admiral. This is what Earth made us. Finally, we get to stop pretending to be normal. We get to be what we really are." Her voice dropped to almost a whisper. "And honestly, we are getting bored." 6 hours later, a single dropship descended through the atmosphere of Varix Prime. It avoided the Dratic anti-air positions by flying so low that its hull scraped treetops. It touched down in a forest 30 miles behind enemy lines, deposited its cargo, and immediately retreated. 12 humans vanished into the darkness. For 3 days, nothing happened. The Dravic continued their siege. The Valoran defenders continued their slow retreat. Commander Vex monitored reports from the surface and saw no sign of the human squad. "They are dead," he concluded. 300,000 Dratic. What did they expect? Then the reports started coming. A Dravic commander, dead in his command center. The door was locked from the inside. There was no sign of entry. His body was arranged carefully, almost peacefully, with a small card placed on his chest. The card had a symbol on it, a grinning skull. That night, 17 Dravic soldiers on patrol simply vanished. Their hive link went silent, one by one, over the course of 3 hours. When search parties found the bodies, they were scattered over a 2-mile radius. Each one had been killed silently, quickly, efficiently. The hive mind felt the deaths. For the first time, the collective experienced something it had never felt before. Private Dawn moved through the Dratic camp like a ghost. He did not run or hide. He simply walked in the spaces between their attention. When they looked left, he went right. When they watched the shadows, he stood in plain sight. The Dratic trusted their hive consciousness to warn them of danger. They did not expect a predator that could exist beneath the level of their awareness. He killed 9 soldiers in 1 hour. Each kill was quick and silent. Then he moved on, leaving the bodies where they fell. The collective found them at dawn. The hive mind screamed with confusion. How? How had this happened? How had an enemy walked through their camp unseen? Corporal Myre answered that question on the 4th night. She allowed herself to be spotted. Just a glimpse, a shadow at the edge of a patrol's vision. The soldiers reported the sighting. The hive mind directed 50 warriors to investigate. They found nothing. Then they returned to their base and found 30 of their guards dead. Myre had circled behind them while they searched for her. She had killed the guards one by one, working from the outside in, always staying one step ahead of the hive mind's awareness. By the time the patrol returned, she was gone, leaving only corpses. Specialist Jiwoo waged a different kind of war. She had spent the first 2 days observing Dravic communication patterns. Their hive link was powerful but simple. It relied on certain signal frequencies, certain neural patterns. On the 5th day, she found a way to disrupt it. Suddenly, units began receiving false commands. Patrols walked in circles. Supply shipments went to the wrong locations. Attacks were launched at empty positions. The collective tried to correct these errors, but for every fix, Jiwoo introduced 2 new problems. Chaos spread through the Dravic forces like a disease. Private Hanul made no attempt at subtlety. He found a Dravic ammunition depot and destroyed it with improvised explosives. The explosion lit up the night sky. As soldiers rushed to investigate, he opened fire with his shotgun, walking calmly through the confusion, killing everything that moved. When reinforcements arrived, he was gone. The depot was ashes. But it was Lance Corporal Swa who broke them. She did not kill. Not at first. She appeared. A glimpse of a pale face in the darkness. A figure standing motionless at the edge of the firelight. A shadow that moved wrong. The Dravik who saw her reported what they saw. The hive mind shared their experiences. Suddenly, 300,000 soldiers knew that something was watching them. Something that did not attack. Something that just watched. And waited. Sleep became impossible. The collective consciousness hummed with anxiety. Every shadow might contain the watching thing. Every moment of silence might be the moment before death. Then Swa started leaving messages. Bodies arranged in patterns. Symbols drawn in blood. Words in the Dravik language. Written on walls and places that should have been secure. We see you. The collective had never known psychological warfare. They were a hive mind. They were supposed to be immune to individual fear. But Swa understood something profound. Shared consciousness meant shared terror. When one Dravik was afraid, all Dravik were afraid. And she made them very, very afraid. By the 10th day, the Dravik offensive had stalled. Soldiers refused to patrol at night. Commanders would not leave their bunkers. The hive mind was fractured with fear and confusion, and something that might have been madness. On the 12th day, Sergeant Yuna walked into the Dravik command center. She walked through the front door. The guards did not stop her. They were too afraid to move. She passed through corridors filled with soldiers who pressed themselves against walls, trembling. The Overmind was waiting. It was a massive creature, 3 times the size of a normal Dravik, its body covered in neural tendrils that connected it to the entire collective. It had felt every death, every moment of terror, every second of doubt that the humans had inflicted on its swarm. "What are you?" it asked through a speaker, its voice synthesized from the thoughts of millions. Yuna smiled. "We are humans. You are demons. That too." Yuna sat down on a supply crate, making herself comfortable. "You are going to leave this planet. Today, you are going to take your soldiers and your ships and return to Dravik space. You are never going to trouble the Valoran Empire again. We are the collective. We are 300,000 strong." 6 months had passed since the Battle of Varix Prime. In that time, the galaxy had changed. Word of the Dravik defeat spread like fire through the stars. A hive mind of 300,000 warriors, broken by 12 beings from an unknown world. The story grew with each telling. Some versions claimed the humans had killed 10,000 enemies. Others whispered that they were not truly alive, that they were machines or spirits or something worse. The truth, as always, was more frightening than the legends. Admiral Tovan stood on the observation deck of his flagship, watching the stars drift past. Behind him, the door opened. He did not need to turn around to know who it was. "Sergeant Yuna," he said. She walked up beside him, her small frame barely reaching his chest. 6 months ago, he had looked at her and seen a primitive, a simple creature from a backwater world. Now he looked at her and saw something else entirely. He saw death wearing a human face. "You wanted to see me, Admiral?" "Yes." Tovan turned from the window. "The High Council has made a decision about your species. About Earth." Yuna's expression did not change. "Let me guess. Protection status." "Yes, Earth has been classified as a restricted world. No Valoran vessel may approach within 50 light years. No trade agreements. No colonial claims. No contact of any kind without explicit permission from your government." "Interesting." Yuna tilted her head. "Usually, the Empire puts restrictions on species that might threaten them, not the other way around. That is precisely why we have done this. Tovin walked to his desk and activated a holographic display. Do you know what the collective told our diplomatic team? When we asked why they retreated, I imagine they said something unflattering about us. They said you were unnatural, an aberration in the pattern of life. They said that normal species evolved toward cooperation and stability. Your species evolved toward violence and chaos. Tovin's mandibles clicked. They said you should have destroyed yourselves long ago. The fact that you survived proves there is something fundamentally wrong with your design. Yuna laughed softly. The bugs are not entirely wrong. No, they are not. Tovin turned off the display. I have been admiral of this fleet for 80 years. I have conquered worlds and commanded millions. I have faced enemies that would give most beings nightmares. And I am telling you, Sergeant, that your people frighten me more than all of them combined. Is that why you are sending us away? We are not sending you away. We are giving you a choice. Tovin sat down heavily. He suddenly looked very old. The Empire needs soldiers like you. The galaxy is full of threats. The Mantis Horde, the Silicon Swarm, the remnants of the Collective. We could use human warriors to face these enemies. But I have seen what happens when weapons are used too often. They stop being weapons and start being masters. He looked at Yuna with all four of his eyes. I am offering you a choice, Sergeant. Your squad can remain with the Empire, deployed against our enemies, granted status and resources beyond anything your world has ever known. Or you can return to Earth, protected and isolated, never to be called upon again. Yuna was quiet for a long moment. She looked out at the stars, her face unreadable. Can I ask you something, Admiral? Of course. In all your years of conquest, did you ever enjoy it? The fighting, the killing, the destruction. Tovin considered the question. No, he admitted. War is necessary. It is how the strong prove their strength and the weak learn their place. But enjoyment? No, I find no pleasure in death. That is the difference between us. Yuna turned back to him. We do not fight because we must. We fight because some part of us needs it. The violence, the fear, the absolute clarity of combat. Her eyes were distant. When I am in battle, everything makes sense. The world becomes simple. Kill or die. Win or lose. There are no complications. No doubts. Just action and reaction. That sounds like madness. It is madness. But it is our madness. It is what makes us effective. She smiled, and for a moment, she looked almost human. Almost normal. Your offer is generous, Admiral. But I think you already know our answer. You will stay. We will stay. Yuna nodded. Not because of the status or resources, but because if we return to Earth, we will have nothing to kill. And that will drive us insane. She paused. More insane. Tovin felt a strange mixture of relief and dread. Relief that these terrifying warriors would fight for the Empire. Dread at what that might mean in the long term. There will be rules, he said. Limitations. You will not be allowed near civilian populations. Your targets will be chosen by Imperial command. If you show signs of instability, Admiral. Yuna held up her hand. We understand. Point us at your enemies, and we will destroy them. Point us at your friends, and we will destroy you. She smiled again. Simple terms. We appreciate simple terms. The treaty was signed that day. Earth received protected status. The 12 human soldiers received official designation as an Imperial Special Operations Unit. They would be deployed only against the most dangerous enemies in the most hopeless situations. When all other options had failed, they would be the Empire's final argument. In the months that followed, stories continued to spread. The Mantis horde retreated from 3 systems after a single human was sighted on one of their worlds. The Silicon Swarm lost 17 colony ships to sabotage, their artificial minds unable to comprehend enemies that did not behave rationally. A pirate confederation surrendered to Imperial forces without a fight, terrified of rumors that the human squad had been assigned to their sector. The humans themselves became legends. Soldiers told stories around fires, in barracks, in the dark spaces between stars. They spoke of Sergeant Una, who could look a being in the eyes and drain away their will to fight. Of Private Dawn, who moved so fast that cameras could not track him. Of Corporal Myre, who could walk through walls and vanish like smoke. Of Lance Corporal Swa, who drove entire armies mad with fear. 1 year after the Battle of Varix Prime, Admiral Tovan met with Sergeant Una one final time. He was retiring, returning to his homeworld to spend his remaining years in peace. A new admiral would take command of the fleet. "I wanted to thank you," Tovan said. "And to warn you." "Warn us?" Una raised an eyebrow. "The new admiral is young, ambitious. He does not understand what you are. He sees you as tools, nothing more." Tovan's voice was heavy. "Be careful, Sergeant. The Empire is grateful now, but gratitude fades. When your enemies are defeated and your service is no longer needed, there will be those who see you as a threat." "Are we a threat?" "You are the greatest threat this galaxy has ever seen." Tovan stood and extended his hand in the human gesture of respect. "I hope I never live to see what happens if someone is foolish enough to prove that." Una shook his hand. Her grip was firm and warm. "Go home, Admiral. Enjoy your peace. You have earned it." Tovan left the next day. He never saw the human squad again, but he thought about them often in the quiet nights of his retirement. He thought about Una's smile and Dahan's speed and Murray's silence. He thought about what it meant that such creatures existed, that evolution could produce beings so perfectly designed for destruction. And he thought about the future, the day when the Empire's enemies were gone and the humans were no longer needed. The day when someone in power looked at those 12 soldiers and saw not allies, but problems to be eliminated. He hoped he would be dead by then, because he knew, with absolute certainty, how that confrontation would end. Back on the flagship, Sergeant Una stood at the window of her quarters, looking at the stars. Her squad was scattered around the room, each lost in their own thoughts. "The old one is gone," Private Henul observed. "The new one will be trouble, perhaps." Una did not seem concerned. "Perhaps not. And if he becomes trouble?" Una turned from the window. Her face was calm. Her eyes were empty. Her smile was cold. "Then we remind him what we are." She looked at her squad, at these broken, beautiful monsters that Earth had created. They had been rejected by their own world, too dangerous to keep, too valuable to destroy. They had been sent to die among the stars, sacrifices to an alien empire. Instead, they had become something new, something the galaxy had never seen before. They had become the darkness that other darkness feared. "We are weapons," Una said softly. "And weapons do not retire. Weapons do not grow old. Weapons simply wait until they are needed." She looked back at the stars. "And when we are needed, we remind the universe why it should be afraid of the dark." Outside the viewport, ships of the Valoran Empire went about their duties. Soldiers patrolled corridors. Officers reviewed reports. The machinery of galactic civilization continued its eternal dance, and somewhere in that vast, cold empire, 12 humans waited. 12 killers, 12 monsters, 12 weapons that could never be sheathed. They waited for the next enemy, the next war, the next opportunity to do what they were made for. And the galaxy, whether it knew it or not, was grateful. Because as long as the humans were watching, As long as those smiling predators stood between civilization and chaos, no enemy would ever truly feel safe. No shadow would ever be empty. No darkness would ever be complete. Earth had not sent generals. Earth had sent something better, and the universe would never be the same.